Else-if statements allow us to write multiple sections of code and then use Boolean expressions to control which one of the sections is executed. So in our example, we have 3 different sections of code. Here, which prints out positive, here, which prints out negative, and our third one, which prints out 0. Only one of those sections can be executed, and the way that we determine which one is going to be run is by using the Boolean expressions. So we first evaluate the Boolean expression in our if. So we check if x is greater than 0. If that expression is true, then we will execute this statement and then skip all the others. We'll go down to the end of the else section right here and then run any code after that. But if this expression up here is false, then it's going to go down to the else if and check the Boolean expression here. If this is true, then it's going to run this line of code and then skip down to the end. But if this expression is false, so both of these Boolean expressions are false, then we go down to the else and run the code in here. So in this case, since x is 0, we first check, is 0 greater than 0? That is false. So then we move to our else if. Is 0 less than 0? That is also false. So then we move to our else, and it prints out 0. And you can see that over here, that it printed out 0. If we change this to be 1, then it's going to first check, is 1 greater than 0? That is true. So it's going to print out positive and then skip over the rest of this else if statement down to here. So you can see that in action, and it's just going to print out positive. You can see that right there. So no matter what we set x to, only one of these 3 sections of code is going to be executed. So here's another example. When we have else-if statements, we can create as many else-if sections as we want. So the previous example, we had 3 different sections to our if, else, if. Now we have 4. So it's if, else, if, else, if, else. So this works in the same way as the previous example. We start at the beginning, we evaluate this Boolean expression. So when x is negative 12, this is false. So then we move down to our else if. Negative 12 is less than negative 10. That is true. So we run this line of code. We print out very negative. And then we skip everything else and move down to the end of our else. Now if we change this so x is negative 1, then when this runs, we first evaluate, is negative 1 bigger than 0? That's false. So we come down here. Is negative 1 less than negative 10? That is also false. So then we come to our next else if. Is negative 1 less than 0? That is true. So we print out negative, and then we're going to skip our else and come down to the bottom and run any code that we add below that. So you can see that in action here. It will just print out the word negative. And notice that before, even though this Boolean expression was true when x was negative 12, we never evaluated it, because as soon as we hit an expression that is true, like this one, we run that line of code and skip the rest. So we didn't print out 2 of the sections, we just did 1. Now when we write an else if statement, the else at the end, this part right here, is actually optional. So if we don't want to print out the word 0 when x is 0, then we can get rid of this section here. And this is still a valid if, else, if section of code. And when x is negative 1, it's still going to print out the word negative, because we evaluate each Boolean expression in order until we find one that's true. When x is 0, we evaluate, is 0 bigger than 0? That's false. So we come down to else if. Is 0 less than -10? That is false. So then we come down to this one and ask, is 0 less than 0? That is false. So then we skip down to the bottom and we continue with any code down here. So nothing would actually happen. If we run this, you can see nothing will print out, but that's okay. Sometimes you don't want anything to happen if all your Boolean expressions are false. So you don't need to include that else.